This is CBC Here and Now.
One of the biggest hotels in the province is reopening its doors after being closed since April, but it's not because there are more travelers. More on that story coming up.
We're here at the Provincial Labrador Health Centre COVID-19 testing site.
Lineups a kilometre long, drive-through sites crop up in Labrador in the wake of yesterday's COVID case. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. We start tonight in Labrador. Teachers, nursing students, and shoppers from the local stores all lined up in Happy Valley Goose Bay today at 3 drive-through testing stations to get swabbed for COVID-19. At one point, 50 cars and trucks waited in line while 85 more parked by the side of the road. This after one new case of COVID was declared yesterday. An essential healthcare worker from Saskatchewan, a woman between 20 and 39, tested positive after traveling to Labrador with an exemption. People who traveled on the same flights, stayed at the same Deer Lake Hotel, and shopped at the same stores in Happy Valley Goose Bay have been advised to take a test.
We have quite an efficient operation running already. We're well staffed and supported, and the staff have been working tirelessly to prepare. They've now started for the last half hour doing swabs, and we have 3 setups. So we have 3 lanes of traffic. We're testing 3 people at a time, and we're trying to get people through obviously as quickly as possible and give them the guidance that they need from a public health standpoint.
It's not too bad. I mean, could be worse, could be at home and sick, but I'd rather get tested and make sure I don't have it than go to school and all that and spread it to everyone I know and love. Let's just hope that a lot of the tests come back negative and life can hopefully go back to normal as soon as it can.
Well, what are officials saying about this situation? Here Now's Peter Cowan was asking those questions today and joins us live. So Peter, should this person have been going to stores in the community?
Well, the rules say that when an essential healthcare worker like this person comes in, they can go to work right away, but in their off hours, they're supposed to be isolating. So that has a lot of people wondering, why is there concerns about this person having been in the co-op in Happy Valley Goose Bay and the bargain store? And the answer today from the Minister of Health is they're still looking into whether or not any rules were broken in this case.
We cannot simply jump to conclusions. However, those conditions and restrictions on essential workers are placed there for a reason, nor can we have them disregarded. If that is the case, there will have to be consequences. The investigation will yield some options for that, if appropriate, Mr. Speaker.
Now, the minister reiterated today the risk for anyone who was at those stores or at that hotel remains very low. And in fact, in the past, they wouldn't have even tested them. But since they have the capacity, they're telling people that they can get a test, but they just have to monitor for symptoms. They don't have to isolate themselves because that risk is low. But this raises a question, why aren't we testing healthcare workers when they arrive into this province for COVID-19? And we heard today from the acting chief medical officer of health that the problem is the test isn't really a good enough way to know whether or not someone has COVID.
When you test like that upon arrival, the test, like any test, it's not perfect. And if somebody is early in the disease, they're false. They can be a false negative, and that also then gives people the confidence because, you know, most people think, well, I'm negative, I'm good to go. And instead, we have chosen that we would require people to isolate.
Now, we heard today from the PC opposition, they'd like to see a different approach on this. Here's what David Brazel said he thinks.
It's not a 100% guarantee, but it is another safeguard that would ensure if somebody had already gotten something 2 or 3 days before, now it would be in their system and it would be traceable. That's the difference. We're shrugging it off that everybody who's going to come in here might get it while they're on that plane.
Now, we've been talking a lot about people in the community, but what about patients who this healthcare worker may have come in contact with? How many people have been exposed? Well, today the health minister told me he doesn't have those numbers yet. Labrador Grenfell Health is still compiling them. Carolyn?
Thanks so much, Peter. That's Here Now's Peter Cowan reporting live. Well, Wally Anderson is weighing in. Happy Valley Goose Bay's mayor says many frontline workers come from outside the community, but considering many of our new cases have been travel-related, he has questions.
Lately, almost all the positive cases that are confirmed in Newfoundland and Labrador are travel related. And, I think that all of us really need to sit down and take a closer look on travel and the part of self isolation when people from outside come into our province.
And yet another case of COVID-19 to report this evening. Again, a woman between the ages of 20 and 39, this time in the Central Health region. Government says the woman is a resident of the province who was returning from Alberta. She has been self-isolating, though anyone considered a close contact will be advised to quarantine. Tonight's new case is not related to yesterday's in Labrador. There are now 3 active cases of COVID-19 in the province. Well, to some political news now. PC MHA Jim Lester broke the code of conduct by blurring the lines between his farm life and his political life. That's according to the Commissioner for Legislative Standards. The commissioner says Lester made it confusing for government officials. They couldn't tell whether he was coming to them as a farmer or as a member of the opposition. MHAs are allowed to run businesses, but the commissioner says Lester should have put his farming assets into a blind trust, so the distinction was clear. Principle 5 of the Code of Conduct states, in part, members will not engage in personal conduct for conduct that exploits, for private reasons, their positions. But the commissioner says it appears Lester did just that after his application for a Crown land agricultural lease was denied. According to the commissioner, Lester contacted the department's assistant deputy minister on social media, and the staffer felt threatened.
Foremost, I'm glad that the report has been tabled and, the commissioner has brought forth his findings. As a matter of an apology, I've already discussed with ADM Deering, both verbally prior to the report being released, and I did apologize that he, took some of my comments as threatening, because that was not my intention.
Well, according to the report, no one financially gained or lost from the situation. Lester now has to meet with the commissioner to discuss how he can effectively serve as an MHA while running his business. Liberal MHA Jerry Byrne filed the original complaints against Lester. Today, he said it's in the past.
I only wish the very best for MHA Jim Lester and want to extend a hand to work with him. There are a number of issues that I think were brought forward on the floor of the House of Assembly that may have clouded that relationship. As far as I am concerned, at this point in time, those issues have been dealt with.
Well, no surprise that we closed out September well above normal. This is about 2.4 degrees above normal. Our September average in St. John's was about 19.2. And today, as we start the first day of October, an absolutely gorgeous day out there today. 20 to 24 degrees through most of the island, a little bit cooler along the south coast, but definitely a nice afternoon. We do have temperatures and humidex, or the humidex rather, was much better than it was the last couple of days. Not this morning though, up through St. John's for sure. It felt more like 28 earlier today, and that's because we had a cold front go through. Now that we've seen that drop in humidity, now things are going to get back to some of this humid weather as we head through the weekend, then drop like a rock, but I'll have all those details coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, outrage continues in the wake of Doug Snellgrove's second trial, which ended without a verdict. The RNC officer was being retried for sexual assault, and now advocates are asking for a better way to deal with cases like these. Here in Now's Malone Mullen explains just what that could look like.
Doug Snellgrove has been tried twice, and both of those trials have been thrown out due to errors made by 2 different judges. But judges make mistakes all the time, and that's why we have an appeals court. That's also why mistrials like this one sometimes happen. But this is a sexual assault trial. It means the complainant is giving intimate testimony, and she could be living with lasting trauma. That means if there's a third trial, she's going to have to stand up there and give her testimony all over again. We've heard the outrage from people who say our justice system isn't working for victims. They want accountability for that judge's mistake and the one before it. They want that system to change. But what does that look like? Judges aren't disciplined just for messing up the application of the law. They're only removed from the bench for misconduct or for being truly bad at their jobs. So is there a better way to do this within our justice system so that complainants aren't put through the ringer? There are ideas out there like special courts just for sexual assault cases or restorative justice, which focuses on repairing the harm caused by a crime. But this MP is working to adapt the system we already have. His name is Arif Virani. He's advocating Bill C-3, an act to amend the Judges Act, tabled in Ottawa just last week. The idea is to make sure all new judges being appointed across the country have to take sexual assault and trauma training. The bill explicitly recognizes that sexual assault proceedings have a profound effect on the reputations and lives of those affected and present a high possibility of re-victimizing survivors. It wants judges to take seminars about the principles of consent and the myths and stereotypes around complainants. But would that training help in the case of R versus Snellgrove? Judges already have some sexual assault training, but there are people who believe that more of it would make the process much easier on complainants. This is lawyer Rosal Kim, who supports the bill. She says it would teach judges about power dynamics and structural inequalities, and even about the impact of trauma on survivors' behavior and memory. Things she says can't be stripped away from sexual assault proceedings. So is there a reform in the future of sex assault cases? There's certainly an appetite for it, but if Doug Snellgrove heads to a third trial, it's not likely to look vastly different from the last two. Even though change to the courts might not come quickly, outside, these advocates feel that change is worth protesting for. Malone Mullen, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, there's no question the pandemic has decimated the travel industry in this province, and it has shut down the Sheraton Hotel in Newfoundland, one of the biggest hotels in our province. But as Here and Now's Heather Gillis reports, after 6 long months, the hotel has reopened.
The Sheraton Hotel, a landmark in downtown St. John's, was forced to close in April, just weeks after the coronavirus pandemic put the brakes on travel and tourism. It reopened today. Interim General Manager Heather McKinnon says losses are huge.
We've lost between the two hotels that Westmont owns, Delta and Sheraton, we've lost in the millions because we're both conference and corporate hotels, and all of the conferences are wiped out for the remaining of the year.
McKinnon says they're slowly bringing back the 160 staff members that were furloughed. Still, they expect only about 10% of normal bookings. She says many of their fixed cost contractors and suppliers waived charges for 3 to 4 months during the pandemic, but the bills are starting to come due again.
Even a close for an extended period of time might have a detrimental effect on the hotel itself and the operations and its client base. And we started to hear that people thought it was closing for good or that it was for sale, neither of which are true. And the Sheraton has such a strong client base, we thought, okay, it's time to reopen. Plus, we want to get some basic costs covered, like I said.
General Manager Heather McKinnon is now hoping for an uptick in bookings for 2021. She says 65 to 75% of conference organizers have rebooked for next year, though there's still a lot of uncertainty.
Conferences appear to be the segment of the business that's going to recover later than the rest, and we're already starting to hear from conference organizers that are looking to enter into conversations about postponing again from next year, that they're concerned about delegates' reluctance to travel.
Unfortunately, some of the signals we have sent out in recent weeks has been that Newfoundland and Labrador isn't open for business. I hope that we can soon start to plan, because 2021 is right now.
Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, people who get money from the provincial government might experience a delay today. Specifically, there are issues with teachers' salaries and payments for income support. The province says the problem is with its bank, CIBC. Government says the bank is working on it, and most people should receive their payments throughout the day. Well, good news for homeowners. The province's construction rebate program was so successful, the deadline to get your work completed has been extended. Initially, work had to be finished in March. Now, jobs have to be substantially completed by June 30th. That announcement came today. The finance minister says there was such high demand, there was a shortage of supplies and labor. Nearly 12,000 applications have been sent in. She says applications for the rebate are closed and extra resources have been brought in to process the backlog. Anyone who applied will get a response whether or not they qualify.
There's an Orange Shirt Day exhibition that just opened at the Rooms in St. John's, and it's called In Their Own Words, and it delves into the lives of Labrador students in residential schools. Now, due to COVID restrictions, only a limited number of people attended that opening, which included a performance by a group called Strength of the Drum. That show will run for a full year and features the history of the province's residential school system through the words and photographs of former students. Here now spoke with two former students from Labrador as they were installing this exhibition.
These are the candles that we used at when we had the apology in Goose Bay from the Prime Minister. They represent the 3 Aboriginal groups in Labrador. This small one represents us when we were kids. It's come full circle from having a very rough, hard fight with for the residential schools, going to courts, and being able to put them in here and to let them rest, and now knowing that I can rest also is very significant. It's very, very powerful. Residential schools was something that was you never talked about it. And you kept quiet. And now that it's more out in the open and people are more aware and more familiar, understanding a bit more about the residential schools, it just takes some of that weight off, some of that tension.
We were always made to feel that we weren't as good as anybody else. We were always put down. That was the biggest thing that I found and the hardest thing that I had to overcome.
He said, don't you ever speak your language again in this school, with as much venom as he could muster.
I'm really pleased and honored to be here. It's exciting and emotional at the same time. And I'm looking at some of these pictures, and in there I see my mom and my sister and myself. So it's kind of emotional for me, and taking it all in and seeing all the work that's been done, and a lot of pictures of some people we know. I used to work with the residential school survivors for a while, and just hearing the stories and seeing the pictures, it's come all through, came into a circle. So it's really good to see the past and the present and the future of this exhibit to go along the coast and for people to see. It's our history, and we've been there, our parents been there. It's exciting, rewarding, and emotional at the same time. It's so good to see it out in the open now and hearing their stories and knowing what they have gone through, the hardship. So it's good to see it all come together. It's not hidden anymore. My parents, they never spoke about it. So now they're slowly talking about it, and we're learning some of the history that they have gone through and what we have gone through. So it's nice to see that it's here, it's live.
And thanks to video journalist Mark Quinn and Here Now editor Paul Pickett for putting that item together. Now today at the House of Assembly, Lisa Dempster, the minister responsible for Indigenous Affairs and Reconciliation, spoke about Orange Shirt Day and that new exhibition. She reiterated the government's commitment to apologize to Labrador residential school survivors once the world is safe from COVID. Torngat Mountains MHA Leila Evans also spoke about residential schools and the shadow they cast over Indigenous communities, including her hometown, Makkovik.
The orange shirt is a symbol reminding everyone of all the wrongs trespassed against Indigenous children and their parents. The orange shirt is worn to remind us that residential schools isolated Indigenous children from their families and forcibly prevented children from speaking their ancestral language disconnected them from their culture and traditions, and forced them to adopt Christianity in order to assimilate them into Canadian society. It's a harsh reality and must not be forgotten. The orange shirt is a reminder to all of the many generations who today still suffer the wrongs of intergenerational trauma. I myself grew up with the ghosts of residential school trauma in my community and within my own home. I speak today in this honourable House. The wrongs done to Indigenous people through residential schools was not honourable, and an orange shirt worn on September 30th is a reminder to us all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So many people out of work. I know these guys here, they had engineers applying for labor jobs. Just people looking for anything at all.
He thought he had a job for life. Ahead on Here and Now, life in a downturn.
Well, a beautiful evening out there right now. Temperatures still sitting around 18 degrees here in St. John's. Things are going to change, though, as we head into the weekend. I'll have all those details in your full forecast coming up.
This weather forecast is brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. Take the time to explore this fall. Learn more at stayhomeyear.ca.
Ashley is here now with a look at the weather forecast. And Ashley, I couldn't believe the humidity again today. It was like stepping out of my house was like stepping into a warm bath. The air was so heavy and warm.
It was very humid this morning here in St. John's. 28 is actually what it felt like with the Humidex. But another funny thing this morning to note is temperatures were as warm as they were in Florida this morning.
Really?
Right on, yeah, Orlando. Take a look at these numbers across the board. We've got about 21 is what it was in Orlando this morning, same in St. John's. So same air mass that we've been seeing for the past couple of days. And temperatures still pretty beautiful across the board. 17 here in St. John's, and then temperatures near 20 degrees, 21 in Badger, 20 in Corner Brook, and then we've got temperatures in the teens for most of Labrador. Now that Humidex has, you notice, significantly less humid for areas along the west, and that happened earlier this afternoon for the east, and that's thanks to a cold front that pushed through. Now, it didn't drop the temperatures all that much, but it did break that humidity at least for a little bit. And as far as the south coast goes, finally saw a little bit of clearing as well as you got out of that air mass with some sunshine and not so much fog earlier this afternoon. However, we are seeing all of that cloud cover in the east. That will generally continue as we head through the overnight tonight. We're going to see periods of rain along southeastern portions, and then even towards the metro area, we'll probably see some showers overnight tonight, staying generally cloudy as you head towards central. Other than that, a very quiet night. We could see a few showers for Happy Valley, Goose Bay towards central coastal areas as well. But other than that, not a whole lot going on tonight. We are looking at temperatures dipping a little bit more, so not quite as mild as it has been the last couple of days, so you can open up your windows, which will be nice to air out the house. Winds will ease along the west coast and eventually as well for areas in the east. You're just looking at about 20 km/h winds tonight. Cool for Labrador, Lab City down to 2 degrees tonight with your winds finally easing as well, and then about 8 degrees will be the overnight low in Cartwright tonight. Now, tomorrow, we're going to continue to see this beautiful weather for most of western areas of the island. However, you're going to continue to see the cloud cover and periods of rain, certainly for southeastern portions of the Avalon. And as we head into the evening and overnight, more periods of rain will spread further west rather, to encompass most of eastern Newfoundland and continue as we head through the overnight. Eventually, we'll start to see some periods of rain along the south coast, and same thing through parts of Labrador as well. So Environment Canada has issued a special weather statement mainly for southern portions of the Avalon, and that's because we could see upwards of 50+ millimeters of rain for that area. Some models pointing at a little bit higher than that. It will be localized if that's the case, but generally looking at a good 30 to 50 millimeters for the southern areas of the Avalon. Creeping a little bit further north, we'll see anywhere from 10 to as much as 30. This will fall tomorrow through Saturday afternoon, and then you can see that periods of rain through Labrador as well. Temperatures tomorrow, not too bad. Significantly less humid though, again, certainly in the east, anywhere from 18 to 20 degrees with winds generally southerlies, about 20 km/h as we head towards central. Plenty of more sunshine in the west coast as well, with temperatures in the low 20s. Beautiful afternoon expected. And then along the south coast, you're just looking at a little bit cooler, so 15 to as much as 17 degrees. Into Labrador, you're getting into some of that colder air through northern portions and Lab West, so putting the potential for some flurries in there for you. And otherwise, down throughout the southeast, you're looking at temperatures in the mid to high teens continuing. So certainly a nice start to the weekend. Saturday is going to be generally unsettled as that low moves through. In behind that, we should see some clearing for most of us. However, it will stay cloudy with periods of rain through most of the east. And as we head into Sunday, in behind this, we start to see the winds change, and that means a drop in temperature. So Saturday, beautiful, 18 to 22 degrees. Cooler in Labrador though, so putting that chance of flurries in for Nain now. 8 degrees for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, 7 in Cartwright. And then as we head into Sunday, significantly different temperatures. So back into fall. Into fall at this point. 10 degrees for St. John's, 12 in Gander, 13 in Corner Brook, but it does look like plenty of sunshine to go along with that. And then about 7 degrees in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. And as we head through the beginning of next week, it looks like we're going to hang on to these cool temperatures and overnight lows into the single digits. That's certainly the story through central and western Newfoundland as we hover around the 0 degree mark for most of the evenings into next week. For eastern Labrador, you're looking at sunshine to start off the week and temperatures slowly climbing. However, for Lab West, you're looking at a temperature near about 5 degrees on Monday and similar on Tuesday with the potential for some showers and or some flurries. So I wanted to share this shot. Look at this fog rolling into Trinity. Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful shot with us. And if you have any weather photos to share with us, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
The province is forecasting a deficit of almost $2 billion. We learned that in the budget yesterday. The pandemic hit the province's major industries, especially the oil sector. Chris O'Neill Yates shows it's far from just the government feeling the pain of a downturn.
Driving a truck hadn't figured into Jeremy Jestican's career plans.
Yeah, I've been off ever since March 19th and taking jobs here or there, whatever I can get.
Jestican, like many others, had landed a high-paying job in the offshore oil industry. He thought he had a job for life when he got hired as a scaffolder on the Hibernia platform after moving home from Alberta.
They had told us that we'd have a lot of work coming up, and for many years, lots of oil left out there and an extension, and then COVID came around.
That changed everything.
Sent hundreds home in the span of a couple weeks.
Since then, Jestican has taken many lower-paying jobs. But it's work, and with 3 young kids, he couldn't turn it down.
It's hard to say no to them, like one time you never had to, for the past few years.
Oil has been an economic lifeline for the province. Hundreds of high-paying jobs. Last year, oil royalties put $1 billion into provincial revenue. But it's half that much this year, largely because of COVID-19. And the province faces an almost $2 billion deficit.
You really have very little control over the volatility of the commodity.
Andrew Parsons is the province's Minister of Energy. Even with this downturn, Parsons is still committed to oil.
I tell you what, there's absolutely no intent on the part of this government, or I think anybody, to give up on this industry.
The newest project, Husky's $2.2 billion West White Rose, is stalled. The company says it can't afford to proceed in the current global market. Jestican isn't sure he can wait for a rebound in oil. He's thinking of retraining for another job.
Job searching is very competitive right now, as so many people out of work. I know these guys here, they had engineers applying for labor jobs. Just people looking for anything at all.
But Jestican's hope is still to return to his job offshore. A very tall order, as the pandemic shows no signs of abating. Chris O'Neill Yates, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, sticking with the provincial budget, there were a lot of big numbers flying around yesterday. In an effort to make things easier to digest, let's shrink the budget down a bit. Imagine the entire $8 billion budget as a single loonie. Here now, Zach Gowdy shows you how it would break down.
$8,098,076,041. That's a big number to wrap your head around. So let's imagine the entire 2020 budget for Newfoundland and Labrador was just $1, this loonie. The first thing to know is we don't have a dollar. Government revenue for the year is only 88 cents. That means we have a budget deficit of 12 cents, which we have to borrow. How do we spend our budget dollar? The vast majority goes to programs, roughly 38 cents on healthcare, 11 cents on schools, and 5 cents on post-secondary education. We spend 6 cents on our social sector, 3 cents on income assistance, and 2 cents on municipalities. There's also 6 cents for other government spending and 5 cents for natural resources, excluding oil and gas. But the other big spending item is debt. Remember that 12 cents we borrowed? Servicing costs on the province's total debt gobble up 19 cents of our budget loonie. That's the second biggest item on the list. So where does all that money come from? If our total revenue was a loonie, 26 cents would come from income tax, 21 cents from sales tax, another 6 cents from corporate tax, and 2 cents from the gas tax. Our offshore royalties kick in a dime. Alcohol and tobacco sales are good for a nickel. Other revenue sources add 13 cents to the pile. Finally, the federal government sends another 16 cents our way. But remember, in this loony analogy, all that revenue only adds up to 88 cents. We need to borrow 12 cents to make up the whole dollar. That 12 cents will be tacked on to our province's debt, which is now the equivalent of a toonie, or in real numbers, $16.4 billion. That's a lot of coin.
There's a lot of concern over the latest case of COVID-19 in this province. As we reported earlier, this was the lineup for drive-through testing in Happy Valley Goose Bay today. It stretched for a kilometer, people flocking for a test after learning an essential healthcare worker was diagnosed yesterday and may not have isolated. Now, she traveled from Saskatchewan to Deer Lake and then on to Labrador. People who shared a flight, stayed in the same hotel, or visited the same stores have been told to get tested. And joining me now is the mayor of Happy Valley Goose Bay, Wally Anderson. So Mayor Anderson, what went through your mind when you heard the details of this latest positive COVID case?
Well, first of all, it's concern. Nobody wants to hear of a case of COVID-19 in their town.
It appears this person broke the isolation rules that health officials have been begging people to follow. When not at work, this woman was supposed to be in isolation, not out in the community. And on top of it all, she's actually a healthcare worker herself. What do you think about that?
Caroline, we depend on frontline workers to provide our healthcare services to our people, not just in Happy Valley Goose Bay, but in the whole province. Now, that being said and done, if they are essential, then the rule is there, or as we were told, and that except for the workplace, they should isolate.
Back in the early spring, when the pandemic was heightening, you and other municipal leaders in Labrador wanted to tighten or even close up the borders. There were roadside checkpoints established at the border, and it stirred up a bit of controversy at the time. But what is your feeling on that today in light of this incident?
Well, we did the right thing. We have done as a council and as a community, we have done everything in our power to try and keep the virus out. I think that all of us really need to sit down and take a closer look on travel and the part of self-isolation when people from outside come into our province.
Would you consider going that route again and reestablishing some of those checkpoints to kind of keep track of the people who are coming and going?
Caroline, our council stood our ground because we believed it was the right thing to do. And we will stand our ground again to make sure that all the rules are in place. And if we feel that we have to raise the bar, if I can use that word, to make sure that all the rules and regulations are adhered to by people who travel into Goose Bay from out of the province, then our council is willing to go that route again.
What would that route that you're talking about, what would that entail? How would you raise the bar, as you say?
Well, we would lobby again for stronger restrictions. And if we have to go back and to reinforce and to lobby that stricter watch be placed on people coming in from other provinces or outside the Maritimes or outside of the country, then we will lobby and we will go to the authorities to make sure that that these people isolate for 14 days before they even go out into the public.
So do you think the guidelines should be changed so that if another healthcare worker who's deemed essential is allowed into Labrador, that you're given some tools, or the provinces, to be able to keep better tabs on the movement of that person to make sure that they do in fact isolate when they're not at work?
Exactly, and this is the whole, I think, concern that that people have, and that's the biggest question that myself as mayor and our council are asked, as to how come this person did not self-isolate when they were not at work. And that's the kind of things that we will be raising with the provincial officials and with Minister Hagee and his staff.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mayor Anderson, for speaking with me today.
Thank you.
Well, turning to national news, the Quebec government is apologizing to the family of an Indigenous woman over her treatment in a hospital in Joliette. As Joyce Echaquan lay dying on Monday, she posted a live video from her bed, and she was pleading for help and being insulted and ridiculed in profane ways by a nurse. Echaquan's death has triggered widespread outrage, and as Sada Krishnan tells us, the province is trying to take action.
The rallying cries, the heartbreak and the frustration.
Is it going to be the same story again? Or tomorrow? Or next week? When it's going to end?
Many who saw Joyce Echaquan's plea for help are angry and sadly are not surprised. Echaquan's friend Alexia Nequado says she was admitted to hospital 2 years ago for stomach pain. She says she was administered morphine despite her bracelet warning she was allergic. She passed out. When she came to, Nequado says the nurse called her an idiot for not warning her. She filed a complaint but never heard back.
I heard many times people from the community saying that they were mistreated in that institution.
The Grand Chief of the Atikamekw First Nation says several patients have tried to be transferred to other hospitals with better care.
Comme toute la population, on a été très choqués.
Meanwhile, the head of the local health authority says he was shocked to see the video and that staff were shaken. He says it has worked with the community interpreters and trained its staff.
C'est pas allé assez loin.
He's promising the hospital will do more.
She hasn't done the work that she was to do in the last year.
The provincial opposition is calling on the Indigenous Affairs Minister to step down. Sylvie Damour has apologized to Echaquan's family and to the community. But many are tired of words, and some believe there's a reason Echaquan used her phone.
She knew already that something was going to happen.
And something that now has pushed many to say things have to change. Sada Krishnan, CBC News, Montreal.
COVID chaos aboard the province's school buses is supposed to be settling down, but one mom in Corner Brook says she's concerned because her 10-year-old son found out that he will not get a space on the bus, while others who live nearby will. Melissa Beals joins me now from her home in Corner Brook. So Melissa, give me a sense of what the situation is for your son.
The situation is, apparently the distance now is 1.6 kilometres and you're allowed to get the bus. We live at 1.5, so my son is denied. And he is a big safety concern for me when he got to walk to school in the middle of the winter coming with no sidewalks and everything else. So, and he got to be crossing me roads and everything.
Okay, so he'd be walking alone on a road in Corner Brook that has no sidewalks, and that's why you're worried?
I am worried. That is a big concern for me, but I think it's a long distance for a 10-year-old child to be walking.
Your son has always had the school bus. Of course, this is a different kind of year. What about other children who live nearby? What's the situation there?
Some of them is able to get the bus, and there are some of us parents that our kids are not entitled to the bus.
You work, your husband works. What's the family situation?
It is really busy. I work all night shifts, and my husband got to be to work for 8 o'clock in the morning. So when I get off work at 8, I got to come home and pick up my child and bring him to school. So 90% of the time he's late for school when I'm working, and then I got to be out to school to have him picked up by 2:30.
Okay, so you're an essential worker, right?
I'm an essential worker with Western Health, and my husband works with the city.
Okay, so is it possible for either one of you to make the adjustment so that you can be there for your child? Because as you know, we do live in a strange time, and parents have been asked, if they can, to just sort of find ways to get their kids to school themselves.
Well, my employer, I've been to my manager, and they have, because I'm supposed to work days and nights, so they put me on for that. I could work all night shifts, and my husband works all day shifts.
Okay, so obviously you don't see your husband. You make sure that your son gets to school. Have you tried to have any conversations with the district to find out, hey, listen, this is not going to work for me? What have you said?
We've been talking to the school board and, well, mainly the bus depot and everything, and they just come back and said we are denied, and that's it. They're not doing anything for us.
Any indication as to what the criteria is? Because why are some people who live nearby allowed the bus, but your son is not?
That is my biggest question I want to know.
And have you tried to get that answer?
They tell me they cannot give me a reason why other kids are getting the bus and my child is not.
We just said goodbye to September. We're just entering October. What is it going to mean for you if from now until June you have to drive your 10-year-old son to school for the rest of the year?
Me and my husband is not going to see each other very much, and we're going to be really tired because we got to make sure he gets his education, and that's the main priority is my child. They already said that they were supposed to have everything fixed up by the end of September, and it is the end of September, and nothing has been done for us yet.
All right. Well, listen, I hope things improve for you, and if they do, please let us know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, the federal government is pouring billions of dollars into infrastructure projects. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says it's part of an effort to fuel the economy and keep Canadians working during the pandemic.
Through the Canada Infrastructure Bank, this 3-year growth plan will invest in everything from clean power, zero-emission buses and home retrofits, to broadband and irrigation infrastructure for farmers. This is a win-win. With smart, targeted investments, we can get people back on the job and grow the economy while building a healthy, sustainable future for everyone.
The plan will cost $10 billion. Trudeau says it will create about 60,000 jobs. The federal government also says its COVID Alert app has passed a major milestone. More than 3 million Canadians have now downloaded it, and it's now available in a 5th province. But the Prime Minister is calling for even more people to get it.
If you haven't already, download the COVID Alert app from the App Store or Google Play. It's free, it protects your privacy, and it's another way to keep yourself and others safe. As of this morning, Manitoba has now brought the app fully online, joining Ontario, Newfoundland and Labrador, New Brunswick, and Saskatchewan. And in the coming days, we're looking forward to even more provinces following their lead. So download the app today.
Ottawa says more than 610 people who've tested positive have reported their status to COVID alert, most in Ontario, with some in Saskatchewan. Federal officials also say work is underway to add new features to the app, including expanding the technology to wearable devices.
Well, it's going to be significantly less humid tomorrow across the board. Take a look at these temperatures, though. Going to be a beautiful afternoon for the west coast, heading towards central into the mid to high 20s. We're looking at a temperature near 20 degrees for St. John's as well. However, we are looking at some periods of rain spreading across eastern Newfoundland into the evening hours. Could see 30 to 50 millimeters down along the southern portion of the Avalon. And then some flurries back in the forecast for Lab City as we head through the day tomorrow. And then we are going to jump right back into fall as we head towards the weekend. So make sure you enjoy these 20-degree temperatures while they last, because yeah, it's going to get cold.
What a difference.
Amazing. Same temperature as Florida and then a bit of snow. Everything's in there.
That's right.
Amazing. I'm loving it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for watching tonight.
Good night.
Good night.